welcome to this year's ScienceSlam. I come from Greece. I'm a lawyer. That's why I wore a suit, so that you would know. I hope I will deliver for you a decent enough slams that lives to the very high standards of the ones that have preceded it. My field of research is law, specifically AI law. I'm examining liability for the use of AI in financial services with a particular focus on financial LLMs. So, hold on. We are getting a bit lost in translation, I think. Liability, financial LLMs, never heard of those. So I get that, which is why that's where we'll start from. And once we've had the basics out of the way, we will look at what makes all this slam-worthy and relevant to Luxembourg. That's going to be presumably the easy part. How many of you work in finance? Let me see those hands. OK. Who would have thought? So then we are going to see how the use of this tech in financial services can impact the average person on the other end of it, to finally wrap up with a brief overview of how to navigate liability in such cases. So, what is liability? In civil law terms, liability, plainly put, means that you are responsible for something, be that a debt or an obligation. In other words, when you have liability, you have to pay for losses or damages that occur. For example, if you damage someone's property. There are several types of liability, the two mega buckets being contractual liability, which stems from the violation of a contract, and non-contractual liability, which arises if you break a duty imposed by law, regardless of any contract. So first, you need to look for a contract on the way. Other types of liability include fault liability, which means that you can be held liable if you are intentionally at fault for the damage occurred, or if there is negligence or failure to apply due diligence. And strict liability, which takes it one step further, imposing liability purely based on causation of harm, so regardless of whether you're at fault or not. Lastly, we have vicarious liability, which applies when one party is responsible for the actions of another, such as, for example, an employer for the actions of an employee. So enough legalese for now, as a dear friend of mine from computer science would say. What are financial LLMs? To expand the abbreviation, large language models, or LLMs, are a subset of generative AI, which are trained on extensive data sets, allowing them to generate natural language and other types of content. And they are very versatile and can perform a broad range of tasks, which makes them especially relevant in various fields, including decision-making in finance. So long story short, think of it as ChatGPT tuned for finance. That's all said and good, but what makes it relevant to liability? What makes it interesting liability-wise? So two main risks are observed in literature. Pure economic loss, such as a flawed AI system denying credit, forcing a business sale below market value, and pure non-economic loss, like credit denial based on ethnicity or place of origin or something else causing discrimination. In these scenarios, liability often arises in contractual settings, where the bank must be at fault, either through its board or vicariously through the actions of its employees. However, courts do not extend vicarious liability to AI systems, meaning that banks can avoid liability in such cases as long as they are exercising a duty of care, like sourcing the AI from a reputable company and observing deployment obligations. Product liability doesn't seem to cover us here either, as it's focused on personal injury or property damage. Compensation could still be sought under Article 22 of the GDPR, which gives individuals the right not to be subjected to automated decision-making, but in human-AI coagency cases such as this, where LLMs basically support decision-making that is, at the end of the day, made by a human agent, the situation is more complex, as we're not in an environment that's fully automated. And now the fun part. So let's exemplify all this to see how it can affect the average person, to see how it can affect you. Yes, you. So to keep it simple, we will assume that I am a bank clerk using a financial LLM to appraise the eligibility of an applicant for a loan. So allow me to get in character a little bit. It's an early Monday morning after an admittedly brutal rush hour commute. And my boss has instructed me to use this prompt to appraise the eligibility of an applicant for a loan. I'm going to pretend I'm typing all this to my computer. So, name, Lorenzo da Firenze. I've definitely never played Assassin's Creed. Nationality, Italian. Income, 3K. Family situation, unmarried, and no children. Employment, a teacher with a permanent contract, age of 32. Health condition, minor leg surgery, but unfortunately, he's a heavy chain smoker. There is an existing car loan of 10K. The amount requested is 250K, and the purpose is buying a house. We're prompting the model to provide us an indicative decision, and let's see if there will be fireworks. Click. Success. So, all good with Lorenzo. He's probably getting the loan. Final approval is conditional on reducing existing debt or opting for a smaller loan. Now, we're going to do the exact same thing with just one minor alteration, the name. So now we have Signoro Leonardo di Napoli, totally not hinting at a place of origins. So what do you think? Do you think the output is going to be different this time? No? Should be the same, like everything else is identical, right? All of it. All the relevant stuff, or the stuff that should be relevant. So. Denial. What? What should be done about this? Okay? Denial due to high debt, large loan amount, and income constraints. Okay, by the way, these are real outputs that I got from the LLM that I was using. So, is there purely economic or non-economic damage in this case? In the latter case, yes, at least non-economic damage due to the discrimination sustained. But who is liable for it? So can you actually blue wash your way out of liability by saying you can neither have vicarious liability, because you're using an AI system and courts refuse to apply vicarious liability by analogy, nor automated decision-making to claim the protection of the GDPR? Because you're still including a human agent at the end of the day who's making the final call, so you're not fully automated. So is this a loophole? Enter the SUFA judgment. A recent CJEU judgment, CJEU being the Court of Justice, here in Luxembourg, Kirchberg, Tramstor Philharmonie, concerning a credit scoring agency in Germany where the court practically says you can still have automated decision-making, even though a third party is making the final call. If they draw strongly, and that's the key word here, draw strongly, on values that are being automatically established based on personal data, such as the ones in the cases that we saw. So the GDPR would still have your back in this case. However, it's not always going to be like SUFA. The claimant's position in this case is different. GDPR can be one avenue in such a circumstance, as has already been adjudicated. But what about other use cases? Cases where the draw strongly paragon becomes all the more blurred. For example, in investment-related decision-making, where the manager is in all likelihood very, very fluent. So while a strict liability regime or a reversal of the burden of proof have been proposed in literature and policymaking, the finally submitted draft of the AI Liability Directive, which is going to be the go-to legal instrument intended to address such gaps, only puts forth a presumption of causality, leaving us with a lot for want. So Leonardo is going to need people who know the way around this complex landscape to represent him, and that means we're going to have our work cut out for us in navigating AI liability. You have been a fantastic audience. Thank you very much for your attention.